Frank Hartley woke to the wrong kind of silence. 3 months gone, they told him later. November to February lost in the dark. The hospital room smelled like floor wax and something antiseptic that caught in the back of his throat. Gray winter light came through the blinds. A heart monitor beeped steady beside him, the only thing in the room that sounded alive. His left side didn't want to move right. The chair next to the bed sat empty. There was a coffee ring on the side table, perfect circle, like someone had been there, had sat there. But the cup was gone, and so was whoever left it. The silence felt wrong before he understood why. The door opened. A nurse came in, middle-aged woman in scrubs, her face doing something complicated when she saw his eyes open, pity mixed with anger that wasn't meant for him. "Mr. Hartley," she said quietly, "I need to tell you something before the doctor comes." She was holding a piece of paper. Her hand was shaking. Margaret Connolly had been a night shift ICU nurse for 16 years. She'd seen families at their worst and their best, watched people die and watched them come back. But standing there with Diane Hartley's note in her hand, looking at this man who just surfaced from 3 months of darkness, she felt something close to rage. "Your wife left this 2 weeks ago," she said, sitting on the edge of his bed, gentle but direct. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hartley. I thought you should hear it from a person, not just find it on the table." Frank took the paper. His right hand worked fine. The left one trembled against the sheets. The handwriting was Diane's, that careful schoolteacher script she'd always been proud of. "I can't do this anymore. Gerald is taking me to Phoenix. The house papers are in the desk. Don't try to find me." 3 lines. 50 years reduced to 3 lines. He read it twice. The words didn't change. "Where—" His voice came out wrong, slurred on one side. The stroke had taken more than time. "How long was I—" "3 months, Margaret said. "You came in November 10th. It's February now." Frank's hand went to his wedding ring, twisted it. The metal felt strange, like it belonged to someone else's finger. "She left while I was—" Margaret nodded. "I tried to reach her about discharge planning. Her number's disconnected. The social worker tried too, multiple times." He looked at the empty chair, the coffee ring. Did she come at all?" Margaret's jaw tightened. "A few times, early on." She paused, choosing words carefully. "Mr. Hartley, 12 of us knew before you woke up. I'm sorry about that. The whole unit knew." The shame of it hit different than the abandonment. 12 nurses, doctors, orderlies. People had walked past his room knowing his wife had left him unconscious in a hospital bed. Had probably talked about it in the break room. "I need to—" Frank tried to sit up. His left side didn't cooperate. "I need to go home. Maybe if I—" "Mr. Hartley." Margaret's voice was firm. "She's gone. Her note says Phoenix. That's 1,200 miles. But he wasn't hearing it. Couldn't hear it yet. His brain was doing that thing where it offered explanations, rationalized. She was scared, overwhelmed. The stroke had been too much. Once he was stronger, once he could walk and talk right again, she'd come back. "I need to get stronger," he said, clearer this time, forcing the words out straight. "Need therapy, need to get home." The physical therapy room smelled like rubber mats and determination. Frank pushed the walker harder than Rita, his therapist, wanted. "Mr. Hartley, you need to pace yourself. You've only been awake 3 days." Again. He turned the walker, started another lap. The tennis balls on the front feet squeaked against the floor. His left leg dragged slightly, but he made it work. "You're going to hurt yourself." Again. Rita stepped in front of him, forced him to stop. "Why are you doing this? What's the rush?" Frank looked at her. 40-something. Kind eyes. Probably had a husband who came home every night. She wouldn't understand. "Need to get home," he said. "My wife, she needs to see I'm okay." Rita's expression shifted. That same complicated look Margaret had. Everyone in this place knew. Everyone. "Hartley—" "Speech exercises," he interrupted. "What do I do for speech?" She sighed, let it go. Showed him the sheets, phrases to practice, sounds to work on. Frank took them back to his room, sat in the chair by the window, repeated them until his jaw ached. "The rain in Spain. She sells seashells. Peter Piper picked a peck." Stupid phrases, but his voice was getting clearer. 2 more weeks of this, maybe 3, then home. Then Diane would see. Margaret came by during her rounds, found him still practicing at 2 in the morning. "You should be sleeping." "Can't sleep. Need to practice." She pulled up the other chair, sat down. "Mr. Hartley, Frank, pushing too hard won't bring her back." His face did something, crumpled slightly, then hardened. "You don't know that." "I do know that." Her voice was gentle but unyielding. "And so do you, if you let yourself think about it." He went back to the speech exercises. She sat there for a while, then left him to it. Dr. Patel came in the next morning with discharge papers. "You're functional enough for home care," he said. Insurance won't cover more inpatient time. Rita objected from the doorway. He's not ready. He needs another week minimum. Insurance says otherwise. Dr. Patel handed Frank the clipboard. You'll continue with outpatient therapy. Do you have someone who can stay with you for the first few weeks? Frank stared at the form. Next of kin, someone had crossed out Diane's name, written N.A. in different ink. Below that, a blank line. Address where patient will be residing. He didn't know what to write. The room was quiet, except for the monitor beep and the sound of pens clicking. Mr. Hartley? Dr. Toll? Patel prompted. Where will you be going? The door opened. A younger man stood there, mid-30s, uncomfortable in a dress shirt, like he'd come straight from work. Uncle Frank? Tyler, his nephew. Haven't seen the kid in 2 years, maybe 3. Tyler brought his wife, Margaret said from behind him. They've got room. Tyler stepped in. Awkward but earnest. We set up the spare room, it's all ready. And Frank tried to process this. I can go to the house, my house. I'll be fine. Tyler and Margaret exchanged a look. Uncle Frank, Tyler said carefully, about the house. We need to talk about that, but maybe not here, not right now. Something in his voice made Frank's chest tighten. Why not now? Because you just got out of a coma and you need rest, and... Tyler, why can't I go to my house? Tyler gripped the door frame. There's someone living there. The monitor's beep seemed louder suddenly. Frank looked at the discharge papers, at the blank address line, at his nephew's face. Who? We'll talk about it in the car, Tyler said. Let's just get you out of here first. Tyler's wife, Amy, had put vanilla candles in the spare room. The smell hit Frank as soon as he walked in, sweet and foreign, nothing like the bay rum and Old Spice of his own bathroom. The walls had his grandkids' drawings taped up, crayon horses and stick figure families. I hope it's comfortable, Amy said, setting his hospital bag on the bed. The mattress is firm. Tyler's mom said you like firm. Frank nodded, not trusting his voice. The chair in the corner creaked when he sat in it, not his creak. His chair at home had a specific groan in the left back leg, 40 years of his weight settling into the same spot. This was someone else's chair in someone else's house. I'll make some coffee, Amy said. You take it black, right? Yes, ma'am. She came back with it, light and sweet, cream and 2 sugars. Frank drank it anyway, didn't correct her. What did it matter? Dinner was at 6. Tyler's kids, 7 and 9, he thought. Chattered about school and video games and some movie they wanted to see. Tyler talked about his job at the insurance company, asked Frank careful questions about physical therapy. Amy passed dishes and smiled and tried to fill the silences. Frank sat there eating meatloaf that tasted like cardboard, though he knew it was probably fine. Everything tasted like nothing these days. After dinner, he sat by the window in the spare room. Tyler had loaned him an old cell phone. Frank stared at it. This flat rectangle of glass that hadn't existed when he'd gone to work that November morning. Tyler had shown him how to work it. Swipe here, tap there. The weather app said snow coming by Thursday. The phone rang at 8:30, unknown number. Frank fumbled with it, nearly dropped it. Hello? Dad, it's Stephanie. His daughter's voice. He hadn't heard it in months. His throat closed up. Oh, Dad, I just heard. She was crying. Mom called me last week. She told me. I'm so sorry I didn't call sooner. I didn't know you were awake. It's okay. The words came out thick. It's okay, honey. It's not okay. None of this is okay. She took a shaky breath. Dad, Mom said you two had been having problems, that she needed space. She said the stroke was it was too much for her. She needed to think. Frank leaned his forehead against the window. The glass was cold. She said that? She said she still loves you. She just needs time to process everything. Once you're better, once you're home and recovered, she'll come back. I know she will. Something in Frank wanted to believe it, wanted it so badly he could taste it. You think so? Of course. Stephanie's voice lifted, desperate with hope. She's just scared. The stroke was traumatic for her too, seeing you like that. She probably couldn't handle the hospital, all the machines and waiting. But you're better now. You're going to recover. And when you do, things will go back to normal. Frank sat with that. Let himself imagine it. Physical therapy every day, speech exercises, get strong again, walk without the walker, talk without slurring. Then Diane would see he was still Frank, still the man she married, still capable of providing, of being a husband. I'll work hard, he said. I'll get better. I know you will. And Dad, I'll talk to Mom. I'll make her understand. We're still a family. We'll get through this. They talked for 20 minutes. Stephanie did most of the talking, filling him in on her kids, her job teaching high school math, her husband David's promotion, normal things, family things. When she hung up, Frank sat holding the phone. First time in days, something felt almost hopeful. He started physical therapy in Tyler's basement the next morning. The walker on the concrete floor, up and down, building strength, speech exercises at the kitchen table between sessions. Amy left him library books, westerns, Louis L'Amour, without asking if he wanted them. He read them because there was nothing else to do. 3 days passed, then 4. Frank waited for Stephanie to call back, to tell him she'd talked to Diane, that everything was going to be okay. On the 5th day, she called. Her voice was different this time. Flat. Quiet. "Dad, we need to talk." Frank's chest tightened. "What happened?" "I called Mom's cell. The number's disconnected, so I tried the house phone." The house phone. Their landline. The one that had been in the kitchen for 30 years. And? A man answered. Stephanie's voice cracked. I said, "Who is this?" He said, "Who's this?" I told him I'm Diane's daughter. He said, "Oh, she's not here. Want me to take a message?" Just like that. Casual. Like he lived there. Frank's hand tightened on the phone. I called back 4 more times. He answered twice, sounded annoyed. Finally, Mom picked up. Stephanie was crying now, angry tears. She told me to stop harassing them. Them, Dad. She said us. The room tilted slightly. Frank gripped the arm of the chair. Did she say who? Gerald. His name's Gerald. From her book club, she said. And Dad, she wasn't apologetic. She wasn't even sorry. She said she's moved on and I need to respect that. Frank couldn't find words. Stephanie kept talking, her voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. This isn't temporary. She's not coming back. Amy appeared in the doorway, drawn by the tone. She met Frank's eyes, questioning. What do you need? Stephanie was asking. How can I help? Do you need money? A lawyer? What can I... Frank handed the phone to Amy. Couldn't hold it anymore. Couldn't hear anymore. He walked to the other room while Amy took over the call, her voice low and soothing. Through the window, he could see his truck in Tyler's driveway. Tyler had driven it over from the house, from the place that used to be his house. That night, a thick envelope came. County Recorder's Office seal. Official. Tyler brought it to Frank's room, his face pale. Uncle Frank, I think you need to open this. Frank's hands shook too badly. Tyler opened it for him, started reading, and went white. Jesus Christ. He handed over the first page. Property transfer documents. The farmhouse, Frank's farmhouse, the one he'd paid off in 1987, transferred solely into Diane Marie Hartley's name. Dated January 15th. Frank had still been in the ICU. Second week of his coma, there was a notary stamp and his signature at the bottom. Tyler sat at the kitchen table, spreading out papers. Amy stood behind him, phone in hand, typing search terms. Frank just stared at his own signature on the property transfer. It looked right. The F with the loop he'd done since high school. The way the K in Hartley connected to the tail of the R. But he had no memory of signing it. None. There's more, Tyler said quietly, pulling out the second document. Reverse mortgage. $180,000. Amy looked up from her phone. That means they borrowed against the house equity. The bank gave them a lump sum. Dated November 10th, Tyler said. Frank's head snapped up. What? November 10th. Day before your stroke. The room went very still. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked. Inside, the refrigerator hummed. Where's the money? Frank asked. Tyler shuffled through the bank statements. Transferred to an account in Diane's name only. As of last month, the balance was $43. $180,000. Gone. Frank had paid off that house in '87. 37 years of mortgage payments, overtime surveying jobs, weekends and holidays, paid in full, and she'd borrowed against it and taken the money. Can you contest this? Amy asked. He was unconscious when she... This one, maybe. Tyler tapped the property transfer. But the reverse mortgage is dated the day before the stroke. If he signed it... Frank closed his eyes, trying to remember November 10th. Morning came back in pieces. Kitchen table. Surveying maps for a job. The big county contract. Last one before retirement. Diane had brought him coffee. Coffee, he said. Tyler looked up. Want some coffee? No, that morning. She made coffee. It tasted wrong. Amy set down her phone. Wrong how? Bitter. Off. I said something. She said it was a new brand. Frank's hands were shaking. She stood there, watching me drink it. Said I looked pale. The three of them sat with that. The implication hanging in the air like smoke. Uncle Frank, Tyler said carefully. What are you saying? I don't know. Frank stared at the date. November 10th. I remember feeling dizzy. We argued about someone from her book club. Gerald. She said I didn't understand her, that she felt trapped. Then I stood up and the room was spinning. Amy's face had gone white. You think she... I don't know what I think. Frank pushed back from the table. I need to see the house. That's not a good idea. I need to see it. Tyler started to argue, but something in Frank's face stopped him. He got the truck keys. They drove in silence. 3 miles out County Road 14. The farmhouse sat back from the road, white two-story with the barn behind it. Frank had built the barn's back room himself, climate-controlled for the surveying equipment. A truck sat in the driveway, not Diane's car. A newer model, dark blue, Gerald's probably. Frank had Tyler park across the road, just sat there, looking. Lights on in the kitchen, his kitchen. Diane's garden gnomes still lined the walk, but the porch swing was gone. She'd always hated that swing, said it was old-fashioned. Frank had sat on it every evening for 40 years. Movement in the window, a man, younger, maybe late 40s, drinking beer, watching TV, just standing there in Frank's living room like he belonged. Max, the border collie, was in the yard. Smart dog. Frank had raised him from a pup. Frank opened the truck door, got out, used the walker to cross the road. Max, here, boy. The dog's head came up, stared at him, then started barking, loud, aggressive barking. Not the happy bark when Frank came home from work. The stranger danger bark. Max, it's me, it's Frank. The dog kept barking, hackles up. 3 months. 3 months. And Diane's absence had erased him from his own dog's memory. The man appeared in the window, looked out. Frank stood there in the road, holding his walker, his dog barking at him like an intruder. Frank got back in the truck. Tyler drove him back without a word. That night, Frank sat at Tyler's kitchen table. Sat there as the sun went down. As Tyler came home from work. As Amy made dinner and set a plate beside him that he didn't touch. As the kids did homework and went to bed, he didn't move. Just sat there, staring at nothing. Amy checked on him at 6, then 7, then 8. At 9, she touched his shoulder. Frank, do you want to go to bed? He didn't answer, didn't look up. Tyler came down in his pajamas at 10:30, found Frank in the same position, the same chair, the same emptiness. Uncle Frank? Nothing. At 11, Amy called Margaret. Margaret arrived just after 7 the next morning, still in her scrubs from the night shift. Frank was still sitting there, same chair, 13 hours. She set a casserole on the counter, chicken and rice, still warm, and pulled up a chair across from him. Mr. Hartley, she said, this ain't living. Frank's eyes moved to her face. First sign of life since yesterday. And she don't get to kill you twice. She pulled out a small notebook from her scrubs pocket, the kind nurses carry, opened it to pages marked with tabs. I kept notes during your coma, she said. Hospital policy for long-term patients, dates, times, who visited. She paused. What they said. And Frank's hands moved slightly. First movement in hours. Margaret read, February 3rd, 11:15 p.m. Mrs. Hartley entered room, checked if staff were present, stood by bed, and said, quote, this is easier than I thought it would be. You can't argue when you're a vegetable. Frank's hands clenched. February 10th, 2:30 a.m. Mrs. Hartley, on phone in hallway outside room, didn't realize I was at nurse's station. Said, quote, the house is mine now. He'll never know the difference. The coffee mug on the table, cold, untouched since yesterday, cracked. Frank's grip had tightened without him realizing. Margaret kept her voice level. You didn't deserve this. She's a thief and a liar, and I've got 12 pages that prove it. She slid a business card across the table. Tom Brennan, attorney at law, disability rights and elder abuse. My brother-in-law, Margaret said. He handles fraud cases. Pro bono for the ones that matter. Frank stared at the card, didn't pick it up. What if I can't fight this? His voice was barely there. What if I'm too tired? Then she wins, Margaret said simply. And everything you built means nothing. 50 years of work, gone because you were too tired to stand up. Silence filled Tyler's kitchen. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside. Frank picked up the card. Will he see me? Tomorrow at 10. I already called him. Margaret stood, left the casserole, left the card, left the notebook open on the table. One more thing. That notary signature on your property transfer? Frank looked up. My brother-in-law might want to check when that notary's license was valid. Why? Just a hunch. She headed for the door, turned back. People who forge one thing usually forge others. The door closed behind her. Frank sat there holding the business card, Margaret's notebook open in front of him, 12 pages of dates and quotes. Evidence that while he'd been drowning in darkness, his wife had been dismantling his life. But he was sitting differently now, less collapsed, more thinking. His phone buzzed. Text from a number he didn't recognize. This is Margaret. One more thing I forgot to tell you. That coffee your wife made you? The morning before your stroke? I'd mention that to Tom tomorrow. Frank set the phone down, looked at the business card, at the address, 10 a.m. tomorrow. Tyler appeared in his doorway, morning coffee in hand. You okay, Uncle Frank? No, Frank said. But I'm going to be. Tom Brennan's office was in a converted house on Main Street. The coffee maker was broken, so they drank lukewarm from the pot. Frank didn't care. Coffee all tasted the same these days anyway. Tom was younger than Frank expected. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, shirt sleeves rolled up. He spread Frank's documents across his desk like he was assembling a puzzle. Walk me through November 10th, he said. Frank did. The coffee, the dizziness, the argument. Waking up 3 months later to a note. Tom made notes, asked questions Frank couldn't always answer. The stroke had taken some memories, left others sharp as glass. Your signature here, and Tom tapped the reverse mortgage. Do you remember signing this? No. But it's dated the day before your stroke. Is it possible you signed it and don't remember? Frank stared at the signature, his hand, his pen strokes. But the memory was just gone. I don't know. That's honest. Tom pulled out the property transfer. This one, though, you were definitely unconscious. Which means either you signed it before the coma and she filed it during, or she forged it. Yeah. Tom studied the signature. It looks almost right, but not quite. See here? The pressure's different, like someone was copying instead of writing naturally. He called through the door. Danny, come look at this. A kid appeared, early 20s, eager face. Tyler's cousin, the paralegal. Run this notary's license, Tom said. Sandra Perkins. Check if it was valid on January 15th. Danny took the document, disappeared. Tom leaned back. Here's what we've got. Reverse mortgage, maybe you signed it, maybe not. Property transfer, definitely fishy. Your wife's behavior, abandoning you while incapacitated, taking the money. He paused. There are two paths here. Civil court, get the house back, restitution, or criminal charges, fraud, forgery, possibly elder abuse. What's the difference? Civil is quieter. You file, she responds, judge decides. Criminal means the DA's office, depositions, publicity, the whole town knowing details. Frank thought about the nurses who'd known, the social worker, the therapist, everyone who'd looked at him with that complicated pity. The whole town's going to know anyway, he said. Probably true. Tom met his eyes. Criminal is harder to prove, more stressful for you. Depositions, testimony, cross-examination. You sure you want that? Frank looked at Margaret's notebook, still in his jacket pocket. 12 pages of his wife mocking him while he lay helpless. I want criminal charges, he said. I want everyone to know what she did. Tom nodded slowly. Okay, let me work on this. I'll call you in a few days. How much do I owe you? Pro bono, Margaret's family. Tom stood, shook Frank's hand. Go home, rest, let me do the legal work. And in the truck, Tyler said, You sure about criminal charges? That's a big step. I'm sure. His phone rang. Stephanie. Dad, I need to tell you something about Mom. Frank's chest tightened. What? I did some digging. Can I come see you? I don't want to do this over the phone. When? I'm already on the road. I'll be there tonight. The afternoon stretched long. Frank helped Amy with dishes, small normalcy. Tyler's kids asked him to check their math homework. He did, surprised he could still do long division in his head. His phone rang again, number he didn't recognize. Frank, it's Cal Turner. Cal, his old surveying partner. They'd built the business together, split it when Cal retired. Haven't talked in 3 years, not since Cal's wife died. And Frank hadn't known what to say at the funeral beyond showing up with a casserole. Cal, how are you? I'm good. Listen, I heard what happened. I'm sorry. Small town. News traveled. Diane always seemed... Cal trailed off. Well, anyway, I've got some things you might need. Business records, contracts, receipts. What for? Proof you paid for that house. 40 years of invoices don't lie. Cal's voice was gruff. We were partners. I kept everything. Every payment you made on that mortgage, every job we did, every dollar earned. It's all here. Frank's throat went tight. You kept all that? Course I did. Accountant said to keep 7 years. I kept 40. A pause. We were partners, Frank. That means something. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. I'll drive over in a few days. Bring everything. You just focus on getting better. After Cal hung up, Frank sat holding the phone. 2 people now, Margaret and Cal, helping him when they didn't have to, when he hadn't asked. Amy noticed from the kitchen doorway. Good news? Just people being decent. Frank looked at her. Forgot what that felt like. At 6:30, Stephanie's car pulled in. She got out carrying a laptop and a manila folder, her face set in a way Frank had never seen. Not angry. Something harder. She hugged him tight in the driveway. Dad, she's been planning this for months, maybe longer. Inside, she opened the laptop on the kitchen table. Facebook page. Gerald Vance's profile, public. Photos of him and Diane in Phoenix, hiking, at restaurants. Her smiling in ways Frank hadn't seen in years. The dates made his stomach drop. December, January, while he'd been in the ICU. Look at this one. Stephanie zoomed in on a photo from January 5th. Diane, wearing a turquoise and silver bracelet, Frank's grandmother's bracelet. She told me she lost that, he said. 2 years ago. Looked everywhere for it. She didn't lose it. She was saving it, Stephanie's voice was hard, for her new life. She scrolled through comments from Gerald's friends. Happy for you, man. Dated November 15th, before Frank's stroke. Then the text. Screenshots Stephanie had pulled from Diane's iPad, left at Stephanie's house months ago. Messages between Diane and Gerald going back 8 months. Planning, talking about when he's gone, and when we're free. One from October made Frank's blood run cold. Gerald, what if he won't give you a divorce? Diane, I'm working on a solution. 3 weeks before Frank's stroke. Stephanie was watching his face. Dad, there's more. And she pulled up Craigslist. Vintage surveying equipment for sale. Photos of Frank's theodolite, his father's level. The transit equipment worth $15,000. Posted by Gerald. Price, $200 for everything. Frank couldn't breathe. I bought it, Stephanie said quickly. This morning, drove 3 hours, paid cash, it's in my car. She started bringing in boxes. Wrapped carefully. Frank's life's work, his father's legacy, rescued from a Craigslist fire sale. He unwrapped the theodolite with shaking hands. The brass nameplate, Hartley & Son, 1952. His father had given it to him the day he started the business. Stephanie pulled out leather-bound notebooks. I found these, too. Frank's surveying journals, 40 years of entries, jobs, payments, notes. She opened one. March 1985, took the county job. Pays less, but steady. Stephanie needs braces. Diane wants new classroom supplies. Her voice cracked reading it. Another. November 1992, turned down Oklahoma contract. 3 months away. Diane's mother's sick. She needs me home. Tears on Stephanie's face now. Dad, I thought you were just working. I didn't know you were choosing us. Every single time. Frank couldn't speak. I'm going to testify, Stephanie said. When this goes to court, I'm reading these. Someone needs to translate what you were saying all those years. Tyler's phone rang. He answered, listened, went pale. Uncle Frank, it's Tom. You need to hear this. He put it on speaker. Tom's voice filled the kitchen. Frank, we've got something big. Danny ran that notary license. And? Sandra Perkins' license was valid, but Sandra Perkins died in 2020, 4 years before your property transfer was notarized. The kitchen went silent. Someone used a dead woman's notary stamp, Tom said. This isn't civil dispute anymore. This is criminal fraud, forgery, identity theft. I'm filing with the DA Monday. Stephanie stared at her phone. Diane's name on the screen. First time in 3 weeks. She knows something, Stephanie said. She wouldn't call otherwise. Answer it, Frank said. Stephanie hit speaker without telling Diane. Honey, we need to talk about your father. Diane's voice. Sweet, fake sweet, like corn syrup. What about him? He's telling lies, trying to destroy me with lawyers and the property transfer. Stephanie cut in. Did you forge Dad's signature? Silence on the line, long enough to hear breathing. I did what I had to do. He would have fought the divorce. You know that. He was in a coma, Mom. Exactly. If I'd waited, it would have taken years. This was cleaner. Diane's voice hardened. I earned that house. 50 years of putting up with his silence. I read his journals. A pause. What journals? His surveying journals. Every sacrifice he made for us. Every job he took to pay for my braces, your classroom supplies, Grandma's medical bills. Well, those are private. Gerald tried to sell them for $20, along with Grandpa's surveying equipment. Diane's voice went shrill. That equipment was in my barn. Dad's house, which you stole. You don't understand what it was like being married to him. Year after year of nothing. He never talked, never showed emotion, never... I'm testifying against you. The line went quiet. When Diane spoke again, her voice was ice. If you do this, you're choosing him over me. I'll never forgive you. Stephanie's hand was steady on the phone. Good. We're even then. She hung up. Sat there, hands shaking with adrenaline. That felt terrible and amazing at the same time. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. Her phone buzzed. Text from Diane. Fine. Have your father. You'll regret this when you need me. Then another. Blocked. Stephanie stared at the screen. She blocked me. Her own daughter. Frank reached across the table, squeezed her hand. First time he'd initiated touch in months. The next week, evidence accumulated like spring rain. Cal arrived Tuesday with 3 cardboard boxes. 40 years of contracts, invoices, payment records, every mortgage payment Frank had made. Paid in full, 1987, receipt stamped and notarized. They sat in Tyler's garage, sorting through old papers, memories surfacing with each invoice. Remember the Henderson job? Cal asked. 2 weeks in January, froze our asses off. Bought Stephanie's first car with that money. In the county survey in '94, that was a bear. New roof for the house. Frank touched the invoice. Diane wanted skylights. I put in 3. Cal looked at him. You built that business from nothing. That house is yours, Frank, no question. When Cal left, they hugged. Awkward, brief, but real. 40 years of partnership remembered. Thursday, Tom's office called. Church ladies had submitted affidavits. Mrs. Henderson. Diane complained for months about Frank trapping her in marriage. Mrs. Wu. Diane mentioned Gerald by name in Bible study. Asked hypothetically about divorce rights. Mrs. Patterson. Diane asked what happens if my husband couldn't object to a divorce. All dated before Frank's stroke Friday, the reverse mortgage broker's deposition arrived. Tom read it over the phone. The broker admitted under oath that Diane specifically asked about incapacitation scenarios. What happens if her husband becomes unable to object? The broker flagged it as unusual, but processed the loan anyway. Frank gripped the phone. She planned it. Yeah, she did. Tom's voice was grim. DA's office set a hearing date, July 15th. That's 5 months. Gives us time to prepare. And Frank? Diane's lawyer filed a response. What does it say? She's claiming you were emotionally abusive, neglectful, that she was escaping a harmful situation. The words hit like fists. Is that... Frank couldn't finish. It's her defense. And we need to counter it. Tom paused. The journals. We'll use the journals. After he hung up, Frank sat with Tyler and Amy at the kitchen table. Was I? He asked quietly. Was I cold? Neglectful? Amy looked at Tyler. Tyler looked at his hands. Uncle Frank, you showed love the way your generation does. Working, providing, being there. But I never said it. Never told her I loved her. Did she ever ask you to? Frank thought back. 50 years. Had Diane ever said she needed words? Or had she just expected him to know? Had he expected her to understand his silence? I don't know anymore. It doesn't matter, Stephanie said from the doorway. She'd been listening. Even if you weren't perfect, what she did was theft. You don't get to rob someone because they didn't give you enough compliments. She set her laptop on the table. And I'm going to prove it. These journals, every entry shows choice. You chose us, over and over. That's love in any language. Frank looked at his daughter, 42 years old, teaching math to teenagers, married to a good man, raising kids who laughed and felt safe. I did my best, he said. I know, Dad, and your best was enough, more than enough. She opened the journals, started marking entries with sticky notes, building her testimony, translating 50 years of silence into words a courtroom could hear. Outside, April rain started, the kind that washes winter away. Tyler's kids played in it, shrieking with joy. Frank watched them through the window, thought about July, about facing Diane in court, about standing up in front of the whole town and claiming what was his. His hands didn't shake anymore. Okay, he said, let's get ready. May brought preparation. Tom's office became familiar territory. The broken coffee maker, the paralegal's cluttered deed desk, the conference room where they practiced testimony. The judge will ask about your marriage, Tom said. Be honest, don't sugarcoat. What do I say? The truth. You worked, you provided. You thought that was enough. Tom leaned forward. But Frank, here's what matters. Even if you weren't the world's most emotionally available husband, that doesn't give her the right to commit fraud. Those are separate issues. They ran through it again and again, Tom playing Diane's lawyer, asking hard questions. Did you ever tell your wife you loved her? Not in those words. How did you show her? Worked every day, paid the bills, fixed what broke, listened when she talked. But did you tell her she was beautiful, that you appreciated her? Frank hesitated. I thought she knew. Tom nodded. That's honest. Stay with that. Stephanie came every weekend, selecting journal entries, reading them aloud, timing how long each one took. June 1986, Diane wants to visit her sister in California. 2 weeks. I'll take the Hendricks night survey job to cover her ticket. and spending money. Stephanie looked up. Did she go? Yeah, she had a good time. Did you tell her you worked nights to pay for it? No. Why would I? Stephanie marked the entry. Because that's the whole point, Dad. You did these things silently. She thought money just appeared. She didn't see the cost. Frank thought about that. 50 years of silent provision. Had Diane known about the night jobs, the overtime, the contracts he'd taken specifically to cover her wishes? I thought showing was enough, he said. I know. Stephanie squeezed his shoulder. But the judge needs to hear it said out loud. June brought a different kind of evidence. Tom called on a Tuesday. Church ladies want to testify in person, all three of them. Is that necessary? It shows community knowledge, that people saw what was happening, that this wasn't just a private marriage dispute, it was public planning. The ladies came to Tom's office. Mrs. Henderson, Mrs. Wu, Mrs. Patterson, all in their 70s, proper dresses, good shoes. They'd known Diane from Bible study for years. She talked about Gerald constantly, Mrs. Henderson said. Made him sound like a saint. Made you sound like a stone. Mrs. Wu nodded. She asked us about divorce. What happens if a spouse is incapacitated? We thought it was hypothetical. It wasn't, Mrs. Patterson said grimly. She was planning. Frank thanked them for coming. Mrs. Henderson patted his hand. You were always kind to us. Helped with the church roof repair. Didn't charge full price. She looked him in the eye. Diane painted you as cold. But cold men don't volunteer their time for widow ladies. We'll tell the judge that. Late June, a week before the hearing, Tom called with news. Diane's trying to settle. Frank's chest tightened. What's she offering? She'll sign the house back. Split the reverse mortgage money, 50-50, drop all claims. In exchange, you drop the criminal charges. It was tempting. The house back, some money, no courtroom, no testimony, no public dissection of his marriage. What do you think? Frank asked. I think she's scared. The evidence is overwhelming. The DA's interested. She could face jail time. And Tom paused. But it's your call. You've got nothing to prove to anyone. Frank thought about Margaret's ICU notes, the church ladies willing to testify, Stephanie's blocked phone, Cal's 40 years of records, the dog that didn't recognize him. No settlement, he said. We go to court. You're sure? She mocked me while I was dying, stole my house while I couldn't fight back, sold my father's tools for $200. Frank's voice was steady. I want it on record. I want everyone to know. Okay then, Tom sounded satisfied. See you Monday, courthouse, 9 a.m. The night before the hearing, Frank couldn't sleep. He sat on Tyler's porch at 11, watching June bugs circle the light. A car pulled up. Diane. She got out alone. No Gerald. Walked toward the porch, stopped at the bottom step. She looked smaller than he remembered, older, scared. We need to talk, she said, but it was before tomorrow. Please, Frank. Tyler appeared in the doorway behind him. Want me to tell her to leave? Frank looked at his wife of 50 years, at the woman who'd left him unconscious in a hospital, who'd stolen everything he'd built. Give us a minute, he said. Tyler went inside reluctantly, watching through the window. Diane climbed 2 steps, stopped. You look good. The stroke, you've recovered. Frank said nothing. This has gone too far, she said. We can settle this. I'll give you the house back. We'll split the money. No court, no lawyers. We can end this quietly. I'm listening. Drop the criminal charges, please. I made mistakes, but I don't deserve prison. What do you deserve? She flinched. I was protecting myself from a marriage that was killing me. You were cold, Frank, for 50 years. Gerald makes me feel alive. Where's Gerald tonight? She hesitated. He's busy. No, he's bored. I can see it. Diane, you traded 50 years for a man already looking at the exit. Her face crumpled slightly, then hardened. Please, don't do this. I'm begging. Like I would have begged if I'd been conscious? She straightened, anger replacing fear. Fine. We'll do this in court. Everyone will hear what kind of husband you were. Good. And everyone will hear what kind of wife you were. She walked back to her car, paused with the door open. I loved you once, you know. I loved you for 50 years, Frank said. Doesn't change what you did. She drove away. Frank sat on the porch until dawn. When the sun came up, he was ready. July 15th came hot, the kind of heat that made pavement shimmer and turned car interiors into ovens. Frank dressed in Tyler's guest room. His only suit, bought in 2010 for his brother's funeral, loose on him now. Tyler helped with the tie. Frank's hands still shook sometimes, but less than before. Stephanie arrived at 7:30, wearing a conservative navy dress. Her eyes were red. She hadn't slept either. Ready? She asked. No, but we're going anyway. The courthouse was downtown, old limestone building with marble floors. They'd renovated it in the 90s, but kept the character. High ceilings, wooden benches, the kind of place where justice felt weighty. Security checkpoint, metal detector. Frank's walker set it off until the guard waved him through. The lobby echoed with footsteps. Old radiators clanked despite the heat. Someone had the AC cranked so high it felt like winter inside. Margaret stood near the courtroom doors, still in her scrubs. She'd worked the night shift, come straight here. Wouldn't miss it, she said, hugging Frank briefly. Cal arrived next, uncomfortable, in a suit that didn't quite fit anymore. He shook Frank's hand, gripped it hard. Whatever happens, you already did the hard part. You showed up, and the church ladies filed in together. Mrs. Henderson, Mrs. Wu, Mrs. Patterson, proper dresses, good purses, here to bear witness. Tom appeared with his briefcase. Judge Carolyn Reeves. She's fair, recently widowed, so she understands spousal duty. He lowered his voice. And she doesn't suffer fraud lightly. The courtroom doors opened at 8:45. Diane was already inside, front row, left side, wearing turquoise jewelry, expensive, probably bought with the reverse mortgage money. Her lawyer sat beside her. Ms. Chen, sleek woman, expensive suit, the kind that charged $400 an hour. Gerald was there too. Slumped in his seat, phone already out. He looked bored. Frank's side filled in. Stephanie, Margaret, Cal, the church ladies, Tyler and Amy. Tom at the table with his files and evidence boxes. Diane's side stayed sparse. Her lawyer, Gerald. Two people Frank didn't recognize. Probably character witnesses who'd never met him. The bailiff stood. All rise. The Honorable Judge Carolyn Reeves presiding. Everyone stood. The judge entered, 60-something, silver hair, reading glasses on a chain. She took her seat, looked over the courtroom with eyes that had seen every kind of human behavior. Case number 2024, CR 147, State versus Diane Marie Hartley, charges of fraud and forgery. She glanced at both tables. Counselors, are we ready to proceed? Yes, Your Honor, they said in unison. This is a preliminary hearing to determine if there's sufficient evidence for trial. Ms. Chen, you may present your defense. Ms. Chen stood, smooth, polished. Your Honor, this is a story of survival. My client spent 50 years in an emotionally barren marriage. Mr. Hartley, while a hard worker, was emotionally unavailable, controlling through silence and financial dependency. When he suffered a stroke, Mrs. Hartley realized she couldn't continue. She did what she had to do to escape. She painted Diane as trapped, Frank as cold. The property transfer is self-preservation. Your Honor, my client is not a criminal. She's a survivor. The judge made notes. Her face gave nothing away. Call your first witness, Ms. Chen called Diane. Diane walked to the stand like she was going to the principal's office. Sworn in, sat carefully, hands folded. Ms. Chen asked gentle questions. How long were you married? 50 years. Describe the marriage. Lonely, silent. He worked all the time. Was he physically abusive? No. Emotionally? Yes, through neglect. Did you love him? Once. Diane's voice broke. But year after year of nothing. I couldn't do it anymore. Why the property transfer? I was afraid. Afraid he'd never agree to divorce, that I'd be trapped forever. And the reverse mortgage? I needed resources to start over. I'd given him my whole life. I deserved something. Tears, tissue dabbing. A performance Frank recognized from 50 years of watching her manipulate school board meetings. Tom stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Hartley, when did your affair with Gerald Vance begin? Diane hesitated. We were friends initially. When did friendship become intimacy? I don't remember exactly. Tom pulled out printed Facebook posts. These photos are dated October, 8 months before your husband's stroke. You and Mr. Vance hiking in Arizona. Diane's face tightened. We were just friends. These text messages, as Tom handed copies to the judge. Between you and Mr. Vance, October 23rd, he asks, what if he won't give you a divorce? You respond, I'm working on a solution. And that's 3 weeks before Mr. Hartley's stroke. The courtroom went quiet. What solution were you working on, Mrs. Hartley? I just meant, I was thinking about how to approach the conversation. Oh, by forging documents while he was in a coma? I didn't forge. Did you use the notary stamp of Sandra Perkins? Diane looked at her lawyer. Ms. Chin half stood. Your Honor, my client was advised not to answer questions that might. She'll answer, the judge said firmly. Diane's hands twisted in her lap. Yes. But I had to. Did you know Sandra Perkins was deceased? Long pause. Not at first. When did you learn? After I used it. Murmurs in the courtroom. The judge's pen stopped moving. And you still filed the documents? I need it out. Diane's voice rose. Do you understand? 50 years of nothing. He was there, but never there. He never said he loved me. Never showed emotion. Just work and silence and... She was shouting now, composure gone. The judge watched with narrowed eyes. Tom let her rant. Let the courtroom see desperation instead of victimhood. When Diane finally stopped, breathing hard, Tom said quietly, no further questions. Miss Chen declined to redirect. The damage was done. Diane stepped down, shaking. Gerald barely glanced at her as she sat. The judge called a 10-minute recess. In the hallway, Frank leaned against the cool marble wall. Stephanie brought him water. You okay? Yeah. And he was. Diane's performance had cracked under pressure. The truth was starting to show. Margaret appeared. That went better than expected. She's rattled, Tom said, which is good for us. Across the hall, Diane and Gerald were arguing. His body language screamed boredom. Hers, desperation. He checked his phone. She grabbed his arm. He pulled away. 10 minutes, the bailiff called. Everyone filed back in. The courtroom felt different now, heavier. The judge returned, took her seat, removed her reading glasses. A tell Frank was learning meant she was processing something emotional. Brennan, call your first witness. Tom stood. Prosecution calls Margaret Connolly. Margaret walked to the stand in her scrubs, sworn in, sat with the posture of someone who'd testified before. Tom established her credentials. ICU nurse, 16 years, professional witness to Frank's care. Ms. Connolly, did Mrs. Hartley visit her husband during his coma? Yes, irregularly. Can you describe those visits? Margaret pulled out her notebook, the one she'd shown Frank months ago. I kept detailed notes, hospital policy for long-term patients. Please read some for the court. Margaret opened to the first marked page. Her voice was steady, professional, devastating. February 3rd, 11:15 p.m., wife entered room, checked if staff were present, stood by patient's bed and said, quote, "This is easier than I thought it would be. You can't argue when you're a vegetable." The courtroom went absolutely still. Someone in the back gasped. Margaret continued. February 10th, 2:30 a.m., wife on phone in hallway outside room. Didn't realize I was at nurse's station. Quote, "The house is mine now. He'll never know the difference." The judge removed her glasses, rubbed her eyes. February 15th, 9 p.m., wife visited with male companion, later identified as Gerald Vance. Companion asked if patient could hear. Wife laughed, said, quote, "Even if he can, what's he going to do about it?" Mrs. Henderson in the back row started crying quietly. Cal's face had gone red with anger. Gerald was still checking his phone, oblivious. Frank sat very still, hearing it publicly. The words she'd said, thinking he'd never wake up to tell anyone. Margaret read 4 more entries, each worse than the last. By the time she finished, the courtroom felt like a funeral. Ms. Chen stood for cross-examination, looked at her notes, sat back down. No questions, Your Honor. What could she ask? Margaret's notes were contemporaneous, professional, damning. The judge's voice was tight. Next witness. Prosecution calls Calvin Turner. Cal walked to the stand, sat carefully. Tom kept it simple. How long did you know Frank? 43 years. Business partners? Yes. Character? Frank Hartley's word was good as any contract I ever signed. Cal's voice was plain, honest. 40 years, never cheated a client, never missed a payment, never lied. That woman, he pointed at Diane, knew exactly what she was stealing. Ms. Chen's cross was brief. Cal didn't budge. The man's honest. That's all there is to it. The judge made notes, glanced at the clock. Nearly noon. One more witness before lunch, she said. Mr. Brennan. Prosecution calls Stephanie Hartley Chen. Frank's breath caught. This was it. Stephanie stood, walked to the stand carrying the journals, sworn in, sat. Her hands shook slightly, but her voice would be steady. They'd practiced. Tom smiled gently. What are you holding? My father's surveying journals. 40 years of work entries. Can you read some for the court? Stephanie opened the first journal, found the marked entry, took a breath, and began translating 50 years of silence into words. Stephanie's voice filled the courtroom. March 1985, took the county job, pays less but steady. Stephanie needs braces. Diane wants new classroom supplies for her classroom. County job will cover both. She looked up briefly, then continued. November 1992, turned down the Oklahoma contract. 3 months away, good money. But Diane's mother is sick. She needs me home. Family comes first. Her voice cracked slightly on the next one. June 1998, Stephanie's college fund fully funded. Took night jobs for 2 years, worth every hour she got into state. She's going to be a teacher like her mother. Frank looked at his hands, couldn't watch. Couldn't see the courtroom's faces. April 2003. Diane wants to visit her sister in California. 2 weeks. The Hendricks survey is night work, but it'll cover her ticket and spending money. She should see her family. Stephanie turned pages. Decades passing in her hands. September 2010. Diane mentioned wanting skylights. The county contract came through. 3 skylights installed next month. She'll like waking up to natural light. The courtroom was silent except for Stephanie's voice and the soft sound of pages turning. January 2018. Retirement in 2 years. Need to finish paying off Diane's car, set aside for property taxes, make sure the barn roof is solid. Want to leave everything in good shape. She found the final marked entry, her voice barely steady. November 9th, 2024. Tomorrow's the big surveying job, last major contract before retirement. Diane mentioned wanting garden renovations next spring. This job will cover it. 40 years of work. Worth it if she's happy. Stephanie closed the journal, set it carefully on the ledge in front of her. The courtroom stayed quiet. Mrs. Wu was crying. Mrs. Henderson had her hand over her mouth. The bailiff looked away, blinking hard. The judge had taken off her glasses. Wasn't even pretending to be impartial anymore. Stephanie looked directly at her mother. My whole life, I thought Dad was just working, just absent, just cold. Her voice strengthened. I didn't know every job was a choice. Every overtime hour was for us. Every contract he took or turned down was about what we needed. She picked up the journal again. This isn't neglect, Your Honor. This is 50 years of love in a language my mother didn't want to learn how to read. Tom let the silence sit for a long moment. Thank you, Stephanie. No further questions. Ms. Chen stood, looked at Diane, who was staring at the table, diminished. Looked at her notes. No cross-examination, Your Honor. What could she ask? How do you cross-examine documentation of devotion? Stephanie stepped down, walked past her mother without looking at her, sat beside Frank, took his hand, he squeezed back. Couldn't speak. The judge called a 15-minute recess. I need a moment. Everyone stood as she left. Her eyes were red. In the hallway, people kept their distance from Frank, respectful. Margaret brought him water. Cal just stood beside him, solid presence. Diane and Gerald were in the corner, arguing in harsh whispers. I can't do this anymore, Gerald said, loud enough to carry. This is too much. Please, you can't leave now. I'm not doing this. You deal with your mess. He pulled his arm free, walked toward the exit. Gerald! Diane's voice broke. He didn't turn around, just kept walking, out the door, gone. Diane stood alone in the hallway, makeup smeared, turquoise jewelry looking garish, under the fluorescent lights. Ms. Chen approached, said something quiet. Diane shook her head. Court resuming in 2 minutes, the bailiff called. Everyone filed back in. Diane's side was one chair emptier now. She sat alone with her lawyer. The judge returned. Composed again, but her jaw was tight. I've heard enough, she said. I'm ready to rule. The courtroom held its breath. Mrs. Hartley, the evidence of fraud is overwhelming. You used a deceased person's notary stamp to forge property documents while your husband was medically incapacitated. You took out a reverse mortgage the day before his stroke after specifically inquiring about incapacitation scenarios. The judge's voice was hard as stone. The property transfer is void. The farmhouse and all associated property reverts to Franklin Hartley, effective immediately. Frank's chest loosened for the first time in months. You are ordered to return 50% of the reverse mortgage proceeds within 30 days. That's $90,000. Diane's head dropped into her hands. The surveying equipment must be returned immediately, or you will pay its appraised value of $15,000 within 10 days. The judge looked directly at Diane now. I'm referring this case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. You will likely face charges of fraud, forgery, identity theft, and elder abuse. Diane was crying. Real tears now, not performance. Mrs. Hartley, I've presided over many divorces, many difficult marriages. But what you did, the judge paused, choosing words carefully. You didn't just end a marriage. You tried to erase a man while he was fighting for his life. That's not survival. That's cruelty. She turned to Frank. Mr. Hartley, I apologize that the system didn't protect you sooner. Your home is yours. Your possessions are yours. Your dignity is yours. Her voice softened. And for what it's worth, I read every word of those journals. You were seen. Your work counted. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Frank nodded. Couldn't trust his voice. The judge's gavel came down. We're adjourned. The courtroom erupted in quiet motion. Stephanie hugged Frank. Margaret shook his hand, firm and warm. Cal clapped his shoulder. You did it, Cal said simply. Tom gathered his files, grinning. That went better than I hoped. Judge Reeves doesn't mess around. Across the aisle, Diane sat with Ms. Chen, talking urgently. Her lawyer was shaking her head, probably explaining that an appeal would be pointless. People filed out. The church lady stopped by, each squeezing Frank's hand. No words necessary. Tyler and Amy waited in the lobby. Amy was crying, happy tears. "You're coming home, Uncle Frank. Your actual home." Frank stood on the courthouse steps. July heat hit like a wall after the over-air-conditioned building. The sky was blue and clear, the kind of day he'd have been out surveying in his old life. Tom appeared beside him. "There's a final hearing in 2 weeks to formalize everything, transfer the deed, sort out the financials. Do I need to be there?" Tom looked surprised. "Not required. I can handle it." "Then I won't be." You sure? This is your victory." Frank looked at the courthouse, at the doors where Diane would eventually walk out, at the steps where he'd stood this morning, uncertain. "I'm sure," he said. "I already got what I came for." He turned his back on the courthouse and walked toward Tyler's truck. Behind him, the doors opened. Diane emerged alone, looking small and lost in the sunlight. Frank didn't look back. He was going home. 2 days after the hearing, Frank stood in the driveway of his farmhouse. The deed was being processed, but Tom had gotten a court order for immediate occupancy. Diane's things were already gone. Court-ordered removal. Tyler had supervised it, made sure she took only what was hers. The turquoise jewelry, her clothes, her books, the garden gnomes. Frank walked through the front door. The house smelled wrong. Gerald's cologne, stale beer, something Frank couldn't name. He opened every window. July air poured in, hot and clean. Stephanie was in the kitchen scrubbing. She'd gotten here early, started cleaning. "I threw out everything in the fridge," she said. "Wasn't sure what was yours or theirs." "That's fine." They worked in silence for a while. Frank touching walls, door frames, the kitchen table that had been his father's, reclaiming space through small gestures. The bedroom was hardest. New sheets, Stephanie had bought them. The mattress was the same, but it didn't feel haunted, just felt like a bed. By evening, the house smelled like Murphy's oil soap and fresh air, like home. "I should go," Stephanie said. "Let you settle in." "Thanks for today, for all of it." She hugged him. I'll come by Sunday, bring the kids, if that's okay." "More than okay." After she left, Frank stood in the quiet. His quiet, chosen, not inflicted. He walked out to the barn. The door stuck, same as always. Needed WD-40. He'd fix it tomorrow. Inside, the familiar smells hit him. Motor oil, old hay, wood and metal and time. His surveying equipment was arranged on the workbench, exactly where Stephanie had placed it. The theodolite caught the last of the day's light. Brass still shiny, where his hands had polished it over decades. A sound at the barn door. Frank turned. Max stood there. The border collie, older now, uncertain. Frank knelt slowly. "Hey, boy, remember me?" The dog's tail moved, tentative, then faster, recognition clicking into place. Max bounded forward, jumping up, licking Frank's face. Both of them on the barn floor, the dog whining with joy, Frank laughing for the first time in months. "I know, buddy, I know, I missed you too." He sat there for a while, just scratching Max's ears, breathing the barn air, being home. Sunday came bright and clear. Frank was up at 5, same as always. Coffee percolating on the stove. The old stovetop kind he'd used for 40 years. The sound of it was right. The smell was right. He made chili, his recipe. The one Diane always said was too plain. Beans, beef, tomatoes, the spices he'd learned from his mother. Cornbread in the oven. Stephanie's car pulled in at noon. Her kids, Emma and Lucas, tumbled out, heading straight for the barn. "Grandpa, can we see the measuring thing?" Frank took them out, showed them the theodolite, explained how it worked, how his father had taught him how you measure angles and distances to make sure everything's square and true. "Did you measure mountains?" Lucas asked, eyes wide. "Some, mostly roads and property lines, making sure things are built where they're supposed to be." Emma was drawing on a scrap of paper. The barn, the theodolite, stick figures. She labeled it in crayon. Grandpa's workshop. Frank pinned it to the wall beside his father's old surveying maps. Dinner at the kitchen table. The first family meal here in months. David, Stephanie's husband, helped with dishes. The kids asked for ice cream. Frank had bought some yesterday. Vanilla. Simple. They left as the sun was setting, Emma hugging his legs, Lucas asking when they could come back. "Anytime," Frank said. "Anytime you want." He waved from the porch as they drove away. Watched the taillights disappear down County Road 14. Max lay on the porch beside him. The weather radio inside predicted storms by Wednesday. Frank should check the barn roof, make sure the gutters were clear, but for now, he just stood there. On his porch, his land, his home. The wedding ring sat on his dresser now. He'd taken it off this morning. Not out of anger, just time. It was just metal, not a promise anymore. Inside, the house was quiet, but it was a different quiet than Tyler's spare room, than the hospital. Then those 13 hours sitting frozen at someone else's table. This was the quiet of a man who'd fought and won. Not perfectly, not without scars, but won nonetheless. He went inside, Max following, made himself a cup of coffee, sat in his chair, the one with the specific groan in the left back leg, picked up a Louis L'Amour he'd started at Tyler's. Never finished. The clock on the wall ticked. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, evening birds started their songs. Frank opened his book and started reading. Tomorrow he'd drive into town, stop at the hardware store, maybe say hello to a few people. Eventually he'd start taking small surveying jobs again. Not because he needed the money, because the work was still there. And so was he. But tonight he was just home. And that was enough. The house settled around him as the night deepened. Those small sounds a place makes when it's been lived in long enough to have a voice of its own. The floorboard that creaked by the bathroom. The way the pipes hummed when the water heater kicked on. The particular sigh of the back door when wind pressed against it. Frank sat in his chair with the book forgotten in his lap. Max asleep at his feet, the dogs breathing steady and sure. On the refrigerator, Emma's drawing, crayon bright against the white enamel. Grandpa's workshop in a child's careful letters. The wedding ring was upstairs on the dresser. He'd see it every morning, probably for years. Might never move it. Not because he forgave what Diane did. Some things don't get forgiven, just moved past. But because taking it off and hiding it would mean she still had power over something. It was just metal now. A piece of his history, like the theodolite, was a piece of his father's. Through the window, the barn light was still on. He'd go out in the morning, check the equipment, maybe oil the theodolite's mechanisms. Not because he had a job lined up, because taking care of things was what he knew how to do. The weather radio murmured predictions, cold front Wednesday, chance of storms. He'd check the gutters tomorrow, make sure the downspouts were clear. Practical things. The rhythm of a life built on maintenance and attention. 50 years, gone in 3 lines of a note, but the house was still standing. The barn was still solid. The tools still worked. She'd tried to erase him, and she'd failed. That was the thing about honest work, about building things meant to last. You couldn't steal what a man built with his own hands. Not really. The deed might change names, but the studs in these walls, the joists in the barn, the straight property lines he'd surveyed for 3 counties. Those carried his mark whether she wanted them to or not. Frank thought about all those journal entries Stephanie had read. Choices he'd made thinking nobody noticed. Work he'd done in silence, because that's what his father taught him. Provision instead of poetry. Maybe Diane was right that he'd been cold. Maybe he should have said the words out loud, instead of writing them in $signs and overtime hours. 50 years was a long time to misunderstand each other. But theft was theft. Cruelty was cruelty. And a man who worked 40 years to pay for a house earned the right to die in it. He wasn't dying, though. Not anymore. The clock struck 10. Max stirred, looked up at him with those dark eyes that said, "You're here. I'm here. This is enough." "Yeah, boy," Frank said quietly. "We're home." Outside, the first stars were showing through the clouds. The kind of clear night that came after heat when the air finally decided to move again. Good surveying weather if he were 20 years younger and still taking the big contracts, but he wasn't 20 years younger. He was 68, with a rebuilt life and a second chance he hadn't asked for but wouldn't waste. Tomorrow the sun would come up, he'd make coffee, check the barn, maybe drive into town. Simple things. Honest things. The kind of life a man could be proud of, even if nobody was watching. Especially if nobody was watching. Frank closed his eyes in his own chair, in his own house, with his own dog at his feet. The silence held him up instead of hollowing him out, and for the first time in 8 months, he slept straight through till morning.